I know quite a few people over the past couple of years that have stopped doing cosplay. And there's a lot of reasons why people stop cosplaying. I mean, it costs a lot of money. It's pretty time consuming if you make your own costumes. There's some people who just grow out of it. It's just like a phase in their lives, and then they move on to whatever other interest awaits them. Some people are ashamed of doing cosplay, and they hate that they did it when they were 14 and they just stop. Some people feel too underconfident to continue with cosplay. And then, lastly, some people put too much pressure on themselves to finish cosplays. And they decide that they can't take it anymore and they just stop. What I'm gonna address mostly in this video is the pressure people put on themselves to finish cosplay to the point where they drive themselves to quit. Because I've just seen it happening too many times. Holiday Matsuri, I missed that this year. Holiday Matsuri is a convention, for anybody who doesn't know, that happens in Orlando, and it's around Christmas time, so people usually do Christmas themed cosplays, and a lot of really well-known cosplayers attend both as cosplay guests and just to attend the con. People come down because it's warmer down here, and it's one of the best conventions, if not the best convention in Florida at the moment. But I didn't get to attend this year, so I was mostly watching from afar as everybody scrambled to get their costumes in order and stressed themselves out trying to figure out what they needed to get done, whether or not they would be able to finish their cosplays that they promised they would make, and having anxiety over like the panels that they had promised to be a part of, but they can't handle speaking in front of crowds very well. That's one thing that everybody dreads about conventions, and like that's one thing that every cosplayer like that makes their costumes at least talks about is the con crunch. You know, the last couple of weeks before convention when everybody realizes they don't have any of their costumes done and they're scrambling to get them together at the last minute, and they spent all day, all night. They don't sleep, they stress out, they cry, they injure themselves on sewing machines over like trying to finish these costumes. And for Holiday Matsuri, it seemed to be really bad for some of the people that I knew. One mistake that I realize that people make a lot is announcing multiple costumes at a time or an entire lineup months before a convention even starts happening. The reason I say that this is a mistake is because I can guarantee you things are going to go wrong. Like, somebody's gonna drop out of your group, or you're not gonna want to do that costume. You will feel it if you don't want to do a costume. You'll start shopping on Amazon for different pieces of your costume and different materials, or you'll go thrift shopping looking for your clothes, and you will be like, I don't want to spend money on this, or you will hesitate. And if you get those like jitters, and if something goes wrong with your cosplay group or whatever, you're not going to be able to deliver on those promises, or you're going to feel a bunch of pressure to deliver on a promise that you can't fulfill. You don't owe it to anybody to finish these costumes, you know? If you don't get this costume done, it's not the end of the world for your followers. They have other people. And you're not gonna lose people, you're not gonna make people angry, you know? And that whole situation is so much easier to avoid if you just delay announcing your cosplays until the week before the con, or maybe even the last couple days before the con, because then you'll know for sure what you can get done and what you can't. Another thing, I feel like one of the big things that causes con crunch and causes people to procrastinate on their costume is, besides just life, saying that you're going to make multiple costumes. There are people that do that each convention. They're like, I need to make 4 entirely new costumes by Holiday Matsuri, for example. I think people forget that they're not obligated to make 4 entirely new costumes by that convention deadline. And seeing such a big task in front of you, or big 3 or 4 tasks in front of you, you're not going to want to do it. And so what I found personally that helps me get things done without any obligation, without too much pressure, is just one costume. You know, you can make one costume. at a time, and it's totally fine. Right now I'm not gonna say specifically who it is, but I'm working on a Borderlands costume, because I'm getting a little tired of Tiny Tina. And I'm just working on that costume, and that's it. I'm not buying anything else for any other costumes, because another thing that happens is when you're doing so many costumes at a time, you're more likely to just stop doing it halfway through and never pick it up again. I know so many people that have wigs that they bought for costumes that they thought they might do, but that just never amounted to anything. I have friends that have like 20 different wigs, but they've only completed like 5 different cosplays and things like that. And it's just, at least you know your money's going towards something you're gonna finish, and that you're not gonna have some discarded piece of clothing laying around in your closet for the next however many years. I have this red turtleneck sweater. I'll put like an image up when I edit this, but I was trying to cosplay Uncle Ford from Gravity Falls, and I bought the red turtleneck for it at a thrift store, and even though it's just a couple of dollars and it seemed like a simple cosplay, I wore that cosplay once. I actually did finish it. It wasn't great. It was a rushed job, but after I wore that to the one convention, I never, wore that costume again. And the fact of the matter is, like, I wish I still had that money that I spent on that turtleneck, and I wish that, like, I could use that money now that I'm in college to spend on textbooks. I'm donating that turtleneck now, because there's just no point. I don't wear a turtleneck. But like, doing one cosplay at a time fixes issues like that, where you spend a bunch of money on different pieces for costumes, but you don't ever finish them because you're working on so many things at once. And overall, as an artist, that's just something you need to learn, is like, you can't pick up too many projects at once or you'll never get anything done. And also, you can rewear your old costume. You spent the time making that costume. For some people, it's a couple of hours and some mail orders that you did. For some people, it's 10 hours. For some people, it's 50 hours, and for others, it's 100 hours that you spent working on that cosplay. You don't have to make an entirely new cosplay. You can rewear an old one that you're proud of. Or even better, which I've seen a lot of people, especially in the Borderlands cosplay community, do. You can revamp your old one, remake parts of it, repaint other parts of it, and rewear it to a convention, but new and improved. That is usually really cool because you get a sense of how much you've improved over the course of time. I used to wear an actual wig for Tina, and then afterwards I made a foam wig, out of EVA foam. And I improved it by recell shading basically every article of clothing I had. I remade the dress so that the width of the dress would stand out wider, and it looked a lot better. It's not my favorite costume still, but that's just me. But revamping a costume, it takes a lot less effort and a lot less money on your part usually, and it feels satisfying when you finish it and you see how much you've improved. Another thing is not to be afraid to not wear a costume to conventions. Surprise, you don't have to cosplay. If you've got the pass, you can just go. And a lot of the times that's a lot less stressful. Of course, cosplaying and not cosplaying both have their pros and cons. When you're cosplaying, you have a lot of cool moments and a lot of cool interactions with other people that recognize your costume. And people will ask for your picture and things, and that's super cool. That's a super cool part of conventions, but you don't have to wear a costume. When you're not wearing a costume, you don't have to worry about discomfort in general, because usually when you make your own costumes, or even when you order your own costumes, it's not perfectly fitted to you. Sometimes you've got a belt full of a bunch of different props and gear hanging off of your costume, and you made all your props too heavy and the belt is slipping down. Sometimes you glued everything together with hot glue, and you didn't realize that hot glue really isn't as strong as sewing something to your costume, and everything fell apart. Itchy wigs, fixing makeup. You don't have to worry about any of that when you're just like yourself at a convention. And it also, I've noticed, it shifts the focus of how you're spending your time a lot more. Instead of worrying about photo shoots and worrying about like stuff like that, you tend to focus on your friends a lot more. and the time you're having with them. Yeah, you don't have to have a costume. Like, you can go one day with no costume, and it won't be the end of the world, and you'll probably sleep a lot better and feel a lot better for it. Another big problem is pressure to finish cosplays for groups. Group cosplays can be fun, but I think one of the big problems with group cosplays, which is why a couple of people I know stopped cosplaying, is overcommitting to group cosplays, like promising to join 3 different groups and then having the pressure to finish that costume for somebody else can be a factor that causes you to just hate making costumes, you know? Which isn't how it should go. It shouldn't be like you hate making costumes because you're not making it for yourself and you're forcing yourself to make it for somebody else. Some of the bigger solutions to that, I need to stand up straight. I'm always like hunched over. I'm always like a little gremlin. The obvious solution would be try to say no to people, which is hard, I know, for some people. You gotta look at it and be like, am I gonna finish this if I actually go through with this? And the answer, a lot of the time, is just no. I'm not gonna finish his costume if I promise to deliver on it. So I would recommend just learning to say, like, I would love to do this, it would be a great time, but realistically, I don't think I could get that costume done in time for your group. And if your friends are cool, they will say, okay, and go look for somebody else to join their group, or just do the group. You know, it's not going to be the end of the world if you don't join that group. Also, if you have committed to a group, if you're like looking at this task and you're like, I don't want to spend my time on this costume and I don't want to spend my money on this costume, 100% do not do that costume. You're going to have a bad time, and you're probably gonna hate wearing it. And if you feel those vibes early on, best thing you can do is just bail. You can bail, as long as it's not like the day before the con. I think it's best to recognize whether or not you want to make a costume early, like super early, and then be like, I'm not comfortable doing this costume, I don't want to spend my money on this costume, it's just not for me. And again, if your friends are cool, they will be fine with it, and as long as you've given them enough advanced warning so that if they need somebody to replace you, they can go look for that person. You shouldn't be making your costume for the group. You should be joining in the group because you've got the costume, you know? That's part of the reason why the Borderlands fandom, in particular at Florida conventions, has been such a chill, cool environment for me and a lot of other Borderlands cosplayers. Because there's always a meetup at a Florida con for a Borderlands like group, and if you aren't cosplaying Borderlands that day, or if you don't show up to the convention, it's not the end of the world. There's no obligations to go to that photo shoot, and there is absolutely no obligations to finish a Borderlands cosplay for that meetup. And it's okay if we're missing characters, and it's okay if we've got duplicative characters. And making costumes for followers. Sometimes if you've got like 1,000, I don't have a lot of followers. I've got like basically the amount that an average personal account would have on Instagram. But I know some people, if they have like 1,000, 2,000, 6,000, 15,000 followers, they start feeling pressure to make new cosplays and new content all the time so that they don't become irrelevant, so that their followers don't get mad at them. And like I said already, you can rewear costumes and that's fine. And you can actually get a lot of content out of your costumes and make them worth your while. You spent so much time on them, milk them for all they're worth. I have a costume for Willow from Don't Starve, and I wore her to MetroCon this past year, and I didn't get to go to Holiday Matsuri, but I probably would have reworn her then too, because I didn't have the time to make any new costumes. But over this winter break, I've been milking her, really, for all she's worth, and I went out into the woods with a couple of friends, and we did a photo shoot, and I've done some photo edits of her. I've done a tutorial, like a very small one, on how to make her wig. using foam armatures. What else have I done with her? A lot of things. You know, I've been using Willow, and making the amount of time I spent on her fucking wig worth my while. And that's not a bad thing. Let's take, for example, Allison Tabitha, who I respect immensely, and she's incredible at what she does. She's got a handful of cosplays that she's made over the year, and some of her more famous ones, including Captain Jack Sparrow and Widowmaker from Overwatch. I mean, if you look at her profile and you think about how many conventions she's gone to and how long she's been cosplaying compared to how many costumes she's made over the years, you can tell that the amount of cosplays she's made aren't actually that huge. Yet she's immensely popular and respected, and she just rewears her costumes, and, you know, they're incredible. And you can tell that she spent time fixing her cosplays and, you know, like going back and retouching things and done photo shoots and video shoots with them. And nobody's been mad at her for it. Nobody's been mad at her for not making X amount of new costumes, you know? So I think it's important to put that into perspective and realize you don't have to put that much pressure on yourself when it comes to cosplay. And at the end of the day, it is just a hobby. Cosplay is just a hobby, and it's a hobby that you should be enjoying. And it's a hobby that shouldn't be consuming your life and ruining you financially and things like that. And yeah, I think that's just about it. I will be making more videos in the future talking about cosplay. I by no means think that I'm the #1 cosplay expert in blah 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 blah, but I think considering how many times I've seen this problem, it might have been a good time to talk about it and hopefully let someone realize that you can give yourself a break. And yeah, I will see you in a new video, I guess.